Hi, I'd like to talk with you a little bit about two of our main cameras here in mass media, the Canon GF10 and the Canon XA10. These are the same camera. The only difference is that the XA10 has this extra handle for audio inputs on top. You'll see we have a shotgun mic mounted right on top. The GF10 does not have those ports, but it does have a microphone port right down here, just under the handle. So you can still use external microphones, you just plug it in right here. Well, let's take an up-close look at this camera, and I'll walk you through some of the controls you will step into right away. Well, one of the first things we're going to do with this camera is we're going to change it from automatic mode, the green auto, to manual, which is one notch up on this back. Once you do that, you'll see your display changes incredibly, and suddenly you might have all kinds of codes and numbers and a whole lot more to see. So let's take a look at what these things are. This display now has a battery indicator. It tells me where it's recording, and it's recording on the camera's hard drive. It also indicates the frame rate, which is the number of frames of video exposed every second. The format of video tells me that the microphone is currently off. It gives me a little headphone indicator, and it tells me all about the exposure all down here. These are touch screens, so I can do quite a bit. Let's start off with the function button, and we'll set things up the way we want them to be. Well, we're going to select the record program. In record program, we have a lot of varieties. Manual exposure means this camera won't do anything. You make all the decisions. And that's pretty intimidating for starting. Shutter priority and aperture priority we'll really never use in this program. They're really made for amateur videographers, and we're starting off much higher than that. Portrait as well. It just gives the camera too much control. We are going to select programmed auto exposure, and we'll use that just for this first week. So go ahead and select P, and you can just close that window. Now we're going to do something else, and we're going to go to Function and Menu, and we're going to check and see what the frame rate is for this camera. Frame rate means how many frames of video are exposed every second, and we want to shoot 30. So I can see that this camera is set correctly for 30. The other thing we'll set is the recording mode, the format, and we've picked the highest quality video for this camera, and that's just great. Now, if you are working with, let's say, another computer, or you're not here in our classroom and you won't get to our computers, then I'd recommend you select a smaller format. It'll still be HD. Whoops, sorry about that. It'll still be HD, but it won't be quite as hard to handle. So you can go to FXP or even XP, and you'll still be getting really quality video, but your file sizes will be much more manageable. So those of you doing this from a distance, you might be FXP. We're in a classroom, so we'll pick MXP, and we'll get out of this. And I know from this a few things. I'm recording 30 frames per second. I'm recording MXP, the highest quality for this camera. And this little indicator here, record media for movies, means I'm storing my footage right on the camera itself. And this camera has, I believe, 32 gigabytes of space. Quite a bit for this style video. I could record to an SD card loaded inside the camera in either one of two slots, A or B. But I'll pick the camera itself. And that's really all I need from this. Now, this camera is automatic, but I have control of some things. One thing I can control is focus, and I can use this little button, AF or MF, and now I can decide what's in focus. So you'll see I have a few things in front of me. I have a hat, a pen, and some tape, and I can turn this ring at the front of the camera, and this camera now will let me focus in on specific objects. You'll see as soon as I touch the ring, it magnifies, and that's called focus assistance. That way, I can get precise focus on just what I want. And when I get focus, it's hard to see with this camera. What's in focus will get a little bit fuzzy, and that's called focus peaking. It'll just sort of sparkle a little, and you can barely see it. So now in this shot, I focused on my hat, which is way back here, and the pen and tape will be a nice soft focus. I could change that if I wanted to, and I could focus instead on the tape, and my hat might be a softer focus. It all depends just what I want. If I don't want to bother with focus and my subject won't move at all and I know autofocus will work fine, then I can just click autofocus. But that is tricky because there are times when you might be focused in on something and the camera may spot something in the background and focus may change. So most professionals use manual focus, and I'm going to go ahead and leave it right there. Now that's one thing I can do. The other thing I can do will help me adjust my picture. So let me go to the function menu, and I'll go back to record programs at P, and for this first assignment we're going to stay there. But I can change white balance. White balance tells the camera what white is. It is an adjustment for the lighting that you have available. And these are my options. Automatic, which is really the worst case scenario. If you put it on automatic, you're letting the camera make decisions that it may not be very good at making. I'm in a room with a lot of fluorescent lighting, and if I pick F, suddenly things look much more natural. Now you may not be able to see it, but when I'm on automatic, the table in front of me is a dusky gray, and the wall is kind of blue, and I can see the blue cast on the screen. But when I go to fluorescent, the table is goldish yellow, which it actually is in reality, and the wall is sort of an off-white, which it is in reality. So just making this one change from automatic to the proper white balance could make a world of difference to your exposure. If you shoot something and you get the wrong white balance, you can usually fix it later on in editing, but not always. So those are the basic presets, and I'm going to ask that for your work, the minimum you do with white balance is you set a basic preset, and we'll pick fluorescent. So I could stop there, but there's one more thing I could do with white balance if I wanted to go another step. And that is, I could set my own white balance. So let's go back to white balance, and let's scroll down. And you'll see I have set 1 right here, and I'm going to push this. Now, if I put something white in front of my lens, and I'm going to we'll try to make a quick prop here, so hang on. This isn't ideal, but we'll see what we can do. You've got to fill the frame with white, and let's imagine that I've actually done a better job of this than I'm doing right now, and I filled my frame with white. Now, if I push Set WB, it'll calculate for a second, and it'll determine the proper white balance for the room. And it's saying we're at 3800 K, which means 3800 degrees Kelvin. So if I close that, I'll put my camera back to wide, and you can see the room, and it's pretty reasonable. Now, I didn't use a really good white here, so that's why my white balance isn't exactly 100%, but it's pretty good. So that's another thing I can do. I'm not totally happy with that. I didn't spend enough time making that white balance. So I'm going to go back to function. I'm going to select my preset, fluorescent, which was much, much better. Those are the basics of what you can do when you get one step off automatic. Let me give you the quick overview. We talked about focusing and switching from autofocus to manual focus. And when you touch the ring at the front of the camera, it zooms in, lets you focus nice and sharp, and then give it a second and it pops right back to the shot you have. If you've got a scene where nothing's going to move at all, or maybe it's just you just don't have time to get focus, then sometimes autofocus is the best you can do. That's step one, or that's one thing you can do. And the other thing you can do is go into the function menu, white balance, and pick a preset, or use a white card or a good white piece of paper. Make sure, though, that that white totally fills your screen, okay? You don't want to have any other colors there. And then you can set that with the Set 1 button. We'll pick the preset, and we'll close out of this. Now, the one drawback with doing this, with making these changes, is that if you pick up the camera, I'm going to power off for a quick second. Actually, I'll power it back to automatic, and I will power off. If you pick up a camera from our camera room and you plug it, you turn it on, turn your camera to manual, and start shooting, you won't know how it was set. It might be set right now perfectly for this room, but if you take this camera outside, it's going to look absolutely horrible. So once you make those basic changes, white balance and focus, you need to make those changes wherever you shoot. Doesn't matter if it's the same day. Just because you change locations or lighting changes or a cloud moves in front of the sun, everything will be different. For example, if you have selected a white balance for inside, like our fluorescent room, and then you go outside, well, it might be sunny, it might actually be cloudy, or it might be kind of dark and shady. Or you might play with each one of these and see which one looks most accurate. And compare whatever you do to automatic in case maybe that looks better. So that's one basic. I find one trick that's really helpful in doing this work is whenever I shoot a scene, I try to have something in the scene that is white. And that way later, if my white balance is off, it's very easy for me when I'm editing to select a new white balance. Well, those are the basics for this one quick tutorial. You've just had a look at the XA10 and the GF10, moving the camera off automatic to manual, using the programmed auto exposure setting, changing white balance, and changing from autofocus to manual focus. That's just the start of what these cameras can do and how you can have total control over your productions. Thanks.